My name is Parastu Imami, and I'm the host of the Road to Success for Your Highly Sensitive Child. This podcast is about empowering parents of highly sensitive children to nurture their child's unique personality trait and create a path to success. Our podcast provides guidance, insights, and support to help you unlock your child's full potential, fostering resilience, confidence, and a bright future. If you're new to my podcast, please go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2 because they provide information on high sensitivity that all subsequent episodes will build upon. If you skip these episodes, you won't get as much out of this and all subsequent episodes. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com. If you're looking for a talented portrait photographer, I highly recommend Laurie Bishop of Become Studios. Check her website at www.becomebeseen.com. You can find this link in my podcast description. For a limited time, if you use the promo code PARISDO100, you will get a $100 credit towards photo purchases. Today's podcast is a continuation of episode 47, which was released on November 19th, 2024, with my amazing guest, Dortha Hise. Let's talk about a little bit more about your career path. You said that you were an entrepreneur from a very young age, from the age of
11.
11, right? And now, obviously you have had your business for a long time. So
Yeah.
tell us about that. Tell us about your career path.
Yeah. Well, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I got into the legal field because I thought that was my intended path. And oh, yeah, I'm going to go to law school and all the things. And that just really was not my path. And I'm so glad that we share that in common because, people hear me say that and they're like, well, why did you give it up? And I'm like, I didn't give it up. Like it wasn't meant for me and I wasn't meant to be pursuing it. So there's a big difference, I think, in letting go of something that's not meant for you.
Yes.
And pursuing what you are good at, like you mentioned earlier. Um, I had been in a couple of different like network marketing type businesses, about 20 years ago, and was doing one of them sort of full-time-ish. And I had met this woman who was looking for a research assistant, which was a really great thing for me because that's like totally up my alley.
Yeah.
And she hired me to be that for her for a long time. And then she would start asking me, hey, would you be willing to learn this? Would you be willing to learn how to do that? And like, I was always a yes, because I'm like, yeah, like I'm always down to learn stuff. And the next thing I know, I'm like learning to read and write HTML code. And I'm, getting like more and more technical and like getting into more project management and finding that I'm really good at it. And, my natural skill set of being very organized and very like, yes, I'm linear in the way that I think and like, okay, A to Z. And however I get there, it might be like, I'm making a wiggly line in the air, but I'm going to get there and it'll be whatever it is. All of that came together to start supporting more clients and then more clients and more clients, which meant that I actually started my own team. And because I was having trouble keeping up with the amount of work I was doing, right, which was great. It was a good problem to have. So I started bringing on people to help support me, to support my clients, and have been doing all of that for about 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's like a wide variety of things that I do in my business for my clients.
Mm-hmm. That's so amazing. And I'm so happy for you that you found out early on that you're meant to be an entrepreneur. You're not meant to be working for other people.
Yeah.
I didn't have that,
Right.
unfortunately. I went through the career path that I thought was would give me the most amount of money and I would be successful. I climbed the ladder as quickly as I could. I remember when I was working at Sun Microsystems, I kept getting promoted. I kept climbing the ladder super quickly. By the time I was in my 30s, like early 30, I had I had gotten all the way up the ladder, and the next step would have been for me to do managerial work, like and directorship and above.
Hmm.
And and then I really didn't want to manage people because I had managed people when I was working at a law firm, and I really didn't like it. I managed attorneys and I managed the staff, and I really didn't like that experience because some of the staff members would just not want to work, and they would show up to work late, and they would do the bare minimum, and I had to constantly encourage them to do better and do the right thing. And I just decided I don't like babysitting people like that. Like, I didn't know that it would be different at Sun Microsystems because it's a different caliber of people, of course. But then I don't know. I just thought that I had a bad experience. I don't want to go there. So I kind of like, once I got to the top where I would have become a director and above, I kind of slowed down from there, and like, uh, you know, and then we, of course, Sun Microsystem was bought out by Oracle, and so that kind of ended that whole situation anyway. And then I went into business for myself because the economy was not doing well. That was in 2009. And, I thought it's better if I'm working for myself. And I loved it. I loved the
Hmm.
fact that I could pick who I want to work for, like who I want to have as a client and all that. But it was still in the technology world. And then after a few years, somebody basically encouraged me to come to their company, and I ended up being an employee again, gave up my
Mm.
business, and then now I'm back into being my own boss and having my own business, and I love it. And I really truly think that for a highly sensitive person, it's best to have your own business because you're your own boss. You can decide what you do. You can decide how many hours you want to work. You can decide if you need a break because you're overwhelmed. You can take that break, and you don't have anyone that you need to explain to.
Yep.
You can be yourself, do what you need to do, and not have to worry about anybody judging you or anybody labeling you or anybody mistreating you. You have the say. And if somebody does mistreat you, like one of your clients mistreats you, then you're like, okay, I'll finish the project, and I
I'm
won't,
done.
I'm done with you, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't be unprofessional because we're not unprofessional people. I will finish the project that I committed to, and once I'm done, I'm done.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really great that you learned at a young age that you need to have your own business and you are
Yeah.
meant to be an entrepreneur because you didn't waste your time into doing anything else.
Well, I mean, I did though. I was in the legal field for like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
decade, but
yeah,
that's probably in the grand scheme of how long I've been doing this.
yeah,
It's minor, but I will say, to your point about working with other people, I as I reflected on it and in advance of this conversation, kind of just thinking about things, like I had some bosses who were pretty not okay. Like they did things that like definitely stepped over lines.
mhm,
And, I think back on that and I'm just like, gosh, that's another thing of advice I would give to parents. Uh, let your kids know that um that it's okay to share things with you. Because I will tell you that I was afraid to share things with my parents when things would happen. Um, because I was afraid of their reaction.
yeah,
And I don't know what that was stemmed from. Doesn't even matter.
yeah,
But the fact that I was afraid to have honest conversations with them meant that I held that in. And for an HSP, that's just an awful thing, like to not be able to express ourselves and talk about and like know that some things in particular, like just things that I shouldn't have felt like were either my fault or that happened that I shouldn't have felt that way. Like to know that if I had had a parent that knew what was going on, there would have been a different support system in place, I think is kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like to just know that I would have been better supported.
hmm And also, you mentioned earlier too that if your parents had encouraged you more about your creativity and all that, you would have gotten into this business much faster too, much
Yeah.
sooner.
Yeah.
So that, the 10 years that you lost, like if you had that in this business, where would you be today? It would
Yeah.
a lot further along. So yeah,
Right.
it's very important for parents to be supportive um, of their children in the field that they're good at. Like
Yeah.
that's why I encourage my clients to learn about their child's strengths and encourage those strengths, and really just nourish those strengths, because those if the child gets better and better at something that they're already naturally good at, then you're setting them up for success in life, because not that many people know what they're good at even as an adult. Now if you
Yeah.
work with your child to figure out what their strengths are and what they're naturally good at, then they're already going to know that by the time they're an adult. They're going to have a lot more knowledge about who they are and what they're all about by the time they become an adult.
Yeah.
And really being supportive, even if it's something that you don't think would make very much money, but if they're good at it, money is not everything. I know
Yeah.
that people really, especially in the US, they focus on it a lot, but
Hmm.
honestly, I I don't think that if you have a lot of money but you don't love what you're doing, what's that life like? Are you even happy? And what's the point? Do you have joy in your life? What's the
Hmm.
point? Because then you also get kind of crazy and you just want to make money. And the more money you make, the more you spend, and the cycle just continues, and it's a
Yeah.
never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I wanted to say is the communication part. Having an open communication line with your children is so crucial to their development and to their success in life and every aspect of their life, their
Yeah.
relationships, their partnership, romantic relationship, their school, their, adulthood, when they want to go into the workforce. Communication skills, they're the one of the most important skills to have. And if you start that at an early age, your child, by the time they're an adult, they're going to know how to communicate very well. And also, not just to communicate, but to also advocate for themselves. Advocacy is a very important um, skill to have. I didn't have that skill until I went through the drama of my home situation for the past 3.5 years. That's when I finally learned, at this age in my life, I
Yeah.
finally learned how to advocate for myself, because if I didn't advocate for myself, I would lose everything that I have. I would lose my home. I would lose all my money. I would lose everything that I built for myself for the past 40 years,
Yeah.
or maybe not 40 years, but 30 years.
Yeah.
So advocacy, communication is so important. And then also the thing is, like, the child should be able to come and talk to you about anything that is going on in their lives, because at that age, they may not know what they need to be doing with a particular situation. So it's your job as a parent to guide them through
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
What should they be doing? What is the right path to follow? Who do they need to talk to? Who do they need to engage with? All of that is something that a child, depending on their age, may not know. So you're the one that has to advocate for them. You as a parent are the one who needs to teach them those skills. Um,
Hmm.
and advocacy for a highly sensitive child is extremely important. You need to advocate for them when they're a child, but you also need to teach them how to advocate for themselves when you're not around.
Yep.
Because, you're not always going to be there. You're not going to be there with your child when they're at school, for example. So they have to be able to advocate for themselves. And if they are not yet at the age where they can advocate for themselves, then you need to teach them to come back and communicate and let you know what happened so that you could advocate for them.
Yep. For sure. Totally agree.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that we're getting close to the time where we need to wrap up.
Mhm.
Um, Anything else that you want to share with us? Any tips about, how to any tips about high sensitivity that you've learned over time that helps you? For example, with me, I told you about somatic practices that really helped me. Are there any tips that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that sentiment of the somatic practices because, as we've talked about, they've been helpful for me as well. The other thing is spending time in nature for me
Oh,
has been
yeah.
like hugely, hugely cathartic. I
Absolutely.
didn't talk about it on this particular conversation, but I endured a long string of 2-year period of losing 28 people. And in the process, also was diagnosed with a vocal disorder that prevented me from really speaking up much above a whisper.
Mhm.
And it was really getting back to that connection with nature. And it reminded me of that time in the field with the horses and all of those things that when I was a kid and I had that different emotional attachment, that there's an outlet and it's a safe place for me to just like be and be in like communion with my husband and like whoever else we're with and having time with God and like having time for meditation and
Mhm.
reflection and just being in nature, like just being
Yeah.
absorbed and surrounded by it, just something hugely satisfying for my personal, like for my soul. Might not be for everyone. I get that.
Yeah.
But it is, even if you don't like hiking or whatever, but like just sitting outside in the sun and getting a little bit of vitamin D is great. Hugging a tree is incredibly supportive. There's actually
Mhm.
scientific proof that there
Yeah.
is an energetic exchange of
It
ions.
is. And also, what I learned recently is you can ask a tree to give you guidance with
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're struggling in life. And it
Hmm.
actually works.
Yep.
I mean, you're right, there's scientific proof behind it. But if you try it, it's amazing. I tried it for the first time a few months ago, and I was shocked by it. I loved it. First of all, I felt the energy
Yes.
from the tree. And second of all, it actually did give me the answer that I was llooking for, which was
Amazing.
amazing to me. I was like, whoa, this is so crazy.
I love it. I love that you were open to it and you tried it. Like
Yeah,
there's no harm in trying it.
no, absolutely. And that's one thing that I love about myself is that, and maybe this is what I got from the flexibility of dealing with everything that I had to deal with as a child. But I do, if somebody teaches me something, I don't say no to it. I will try it and see if it works. And if it
Yeah.
works, great. And if it doesn't work, then it didn't work for me. It doesn't mean that doesn't work. It just means
Yeah.
that that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I try it.
Yeah.
Unless it's something dangerous and I know I won't like it, then I
Yeah.
know, like, I remember one time I was on these dating apps, and one of the guys on the dating app said, I like to do X, Y, and Z. Would you like to join me? I'm like, oh no, I'm not into that. Thank you very much. And he's like, how do you know? You've never tried it. And I'm like, nope, I already know the answer to that. I'm
I'm
not,
good.
I'm good. And he was like going on and on forever and trying to convince me. I said, dude, you're not going to convince me because I don't have to try it to know it's not for me. So
Yeah,
there are things that I won't try because I already know it's not for me. I mean,
for
it's
sure.
like, intuitively, okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like something I want to try. But if it's something that I know, okay, yeah, I want to try it. Let's see what happens. I love that because if I don't try it and if I already automatically say no to it, then I lose out, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be possibly something that could help me, could benefit from. I mean, this somatic practice, for example, if I thought like the first time I learned about somatic practice was this lady shaking herself like crazy. If I looked at that and said, "Oh my God, that's like craziness. That's
Yeah.
that looks crazy. I don't want to try it." I thought, and I'm not that kind of a person. I'm not a silly person. I'm not a person that would do like silly things like that. But even me, I was like, okay, well, I'm in massive pain. At this point, I will try anything. If this
Mm.
is going to relieve my nervous system and reset my nervous system, I'm going to just go for it. And
Yeah,
I put on the music and I shook like crazy. Like I seriously, if somebody looked at me, they would really think I have gone insane. But guess what? It did help and it
yep.
did get rid of my pain. And then from then on, I started learning about somatic practice, somatic techniques. I mean, there are hundreds of techniques out there,
So many.
so many, and you don't know which one resonates with you. So you've got to
Yeah.
do them all and figure out, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And so I did a lot of studying, a lot of classes, a lot of books until I learned what works for me and what are the ones that I really liked from the hundreds that I learned. Like, what are the ones that the top 20, 30 that I like to teach my clients.
Yeah.
And they really work. But if I
Hmm.
hadn't tried it, if I just looked at that lady and went, oh my God, that looks crazy, like I'm not gonna do that. Um, I wouldn't know anything about somatic practices. That would have been the end of it. I would have been, look, that looks crazy. I don't want it. And that would have been the end of that. And I
Right.
wouldn't be able to say that I healed myself. I healed. I mean, I'm not saying that I got rid of my disorder. It's still there because unfortunately my whole situation with the leak is still ongoing. So until that
Mm.
gets resolved, my illness is not going to get resolved. But at least I'm not in pain. At least
Yeah.
I know, okay, I can relieve my pain without medication.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Huge.
Anything else? Last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I feel like we've talked about all kinds of things and
You
I
want
could
to tell
talk
us
about
about your
many
book,
others.
maybe?
Yeah, well, which one?
Anyone that you like, the newest one or the ones that you've written in the past, whatever you
Yeah.
want. This is
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a new solo book project and I don't know exactly when it's going to be out. So I could just tell you that it's going to be around the transformation that hiking in nature has brought to my life. And the concept is around the woman who started the hike is not the woman who finished the hike.
I
And
love
it's
that.
yeah, thank you. So if you want to stay connected with me, I'm on all the social media places. You can find me. I would love to connect with you. If you have questions, like feel free to reach out. I'm a pretty open book. I know I've shared a lot here, and maybe you have a little one at home that's like, oh, I can hear my so and so in that person. Like, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to be of support. I think that the biggest thing, and Paris too, I'm so glad for you being in the world doing the work that you're doing because it's
Thank you.
like it's making a difference for and for kids not to grow up like us when we're adults and having these conversations. Like they'll grow up saying, hey, like I had a pretty cool childhood and
Yeah.
like here's the things I did. Or, I mean, that's the world I hope we're coming into. But yeah,
Me
so
too. Me too. And not have to spend years and years, resolving our traumas. I mean,
doing all the work.
I've spent most of my adulthood um, working on my traumas, and I
Yep.
have many, many to work through. So I think that I could say only a few years ago, have I felt like, okay, I have resolved all my trauma from my childhood, and now I'm good.
Yeah.
So I think if anything that parents could take away from our life journeys, sharing our and being vulnerable with our listeners is that, we've endured a lot of pain. We've
Hmm.
endured a lot of suffering. And we've of course, we're very resilient people, as highly sensitive people. Most of us are very resilient, but we had to work decades on ourselves.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so that's something that you could take away from your child. That's something that you could prevent um, your child from going through and experiencing all this suffering that we had to go through and experience and learn how to undo all of that. So I hope, at least our hope is that our sharing our story with you. You can learn from us, you can gain the knowledge, and learn what's the best parenting approach that you could have with your highly sensitive child, because your parenting approach is key to their well-being in the world. And you can either set them up for success in life, or you could set them up for a life of, basic suffering and a lot of a lot of suffering, basically. And Dortha and I have been very resilient and working through those sufferings, but not everybody is this resilient. Some people, they become depressed. Some people
Yeah.
have anxiety. Some people become addicted to various substances. So some people actually, unfortunately, kill themselves. So, it's not just suffering that you're going to prevent your child from having, it's also preventing them from having a lot of illnesses, a lot of these things that I just described. So your parenting approach with a highly sensitive child is extremely important. So just know the power that you have in your child's life, and your power is enormous. So we're just hoping and praying that you know this power that you have, and that you will parent your child in a way that's nurturing, loving, and caring, and that you would set up your child for success in all aspects of their life. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Dortha. I'm
Thank you
so,
for having
so
me.
appreciative of you being here, sharing your story with us, being vulnerable, and just, helping me with this mission I have in life of changing how we see highly sensitive people, how we see highly sensitive children, and hopefully helping parents set their child up for success in life.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me. I'm honored and grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you that you have the power to create a bright and successful future for your highly sensitive child. Embrace their uniqueness, nurture their strengths, and provide them with the love and support they need. Together, we can pave a path to success that aligns with their sensitivity. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We'll be here with more insights and inspiration in our next episode. Until then, keep believing in your child's potential, because they truly are extraordinary. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and stay committed to setting your child up for success in life. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please leave a review, share with other parents, and reach out to us with any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com.